Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Critical Conversations, where we discuss hot topic issues related to the Muslim world. Today we will focus our discussion on the rise of domestic violent extremism here in the United States, and to help us understand the phenomenon, we are joined by Mr. Daryl Johnson. Daryl is a former analyst at the Department of Homeland Security who is now the owner of DT Analytics, a private consulting firm for law enforcement and homeland security professionals. He has worked as a senior intelligence analyst, specializing in counterterrorism and threat analysis for the U.S. government since 1991. Daryl has appeared on NBC Nightly News, MSNBC, CNN, Headline News, Current TV, and has been quoted in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, Newsweek, the Chicago Tribune, the LA Times, and the New Yorker magazine on a variety of subjects related to domestic terrorism and extremism. Daryl, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here. So over the past couple of years, we've seen this a rise in terrorist activity around the world, and especially here in the West, there's been an uptick of violence. And whether it's San Bernardino or Paris or Brussels, in all of these areas, we've been seeing a rise in terrorist activity. And because of that, there's a common refrain now that we hear that while every Muslim is not a terrorist, every terrorist is a Muslim. Now, would you agree with that perception in the context of the United States?
Well, unfortunately, that's a stereotype that's out there, and it's been perpetuated in the media. And the fact that our government officials don't call out other forms of terrorism for what it is, there is this misperception that every Muslim is a terrorist. Unfortunately, that is not the case. I totally disagree with that statement. We have a variety of forms of terrorists. We have those on the far right, such as militia extremists, your white supremacists. We also have sovereign citizens, people who reject the authority of the government and renounce their citizenship, don't pay their taxes, don't register their vehicles. We have anti-abortion extremists. And then we also have anarchists that are violent at times. We're getting ready for a presidential election. A lot of times these far leftist groups get agitated about national issues, and they lash out at the political conventions and the summits that are held. And then we also have single issue extremists, such as the animal rights extremists and the earth rights extremists. So there's a real broad spectrum of extremists here, and it's not of the Muslim variety. There's some misconceptions about terrorism that I'd like to address at this time. A lot of times people think that an act of terrorism has to be like a sensational 9/11 type of attack. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of those types of attacks here in the United States. They may come around maybe every 10, 15 years. We call those mass casualty producing attacks. Mm-hmm. Here domestically, we've been having terrorist attacks on a regular basis since the Obama administration took power back in 2008. And these terrorist attacks tend to be much smaller in scale. So you don't have the hundreds or 1,000 people being killed. You have 2 people being killed, or maybe a dozen people being killed. For example, we had the Sikh temple attack back in 2012, where a white supremacist entered a Sikh temple and gunned down 6 Sikh worshippers mm-hmm. there, killing them in their house of worship. We had a similar attack in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015, where a white supremacist went in and killed African-American Christians that were having a Bible study. Mm-hmm. We've also had police officers that have been gunned down by sovereign citizens and killed. We had more recently some of the black nationalist groups are getting violent towards police authorities. Mm-hmm. We had the attack in Dallas, Texas that killed 5 police officers, and right. Another one in Baton Rouge soon thereafter that killed another 3 police officers. So these are the types of attacks that, as an analyst, we tracked and studied, and a lot of times people in the public just don't understand these are terrorist acts because they're not portrayed that way in the media, and the authorities call them hate crimes or other things and don't call it terrorism. So that's what kind of confuses the issue.
Sure, and so for the benefit